It's space weather. Looking at the sun in 193 angstroms. We got a coronal hole rotating in, and another one rotating in right behind it. No sunspots. We got a weak solar wind stream. Let's take a look at 171 angstroms. There is an active region also right here. Not a sunspot. And it's actually breaking down. Let's look at the plasma filament situation in 304 angstroms. Towering plasma down there in the southeast. And there's actually filamentary activity around this area too. Some plasma dancing around on the eastern limb. And we can see the perturbations associated with the setting sunspot 2727. Let's look at some earthquakes. We've had some deep earthquakes. Sketchy, spooky earthquakes. Let's go back 8 hours. Well, Dominica got a deep one. Only a 3.3 magnitude, though, thank goodness. Chile got a deep quake at 4.5 magnitude. Japan gets a 4.7. There was a deep quake at Fiji and Vanuatu and Argentina a little longer ago. What was that one? That was a 5.3 at 527 kilometers deep. So they remain on alert for a mid-level 6 at the surface. Let's look at the spaceweathernews.com data, as we usually do around this time. X-ray flux remains flatlined. No real signal in the phi angle, indicating that we're still awaiting the magnetic connection to the incoming coronal hole. Small little uptick in the solar wind density, and a small downtick in the wind speed. Let's look at the real time. And there's your real-time solar wind, updated every minute. The BTBZ has started to jump around a little bit, so we got to keep an eye on that. Phi angle looks like it may be shifting around again. Again, we're looking for a phi angle of, say, 150 or so with that incoming coronal hole. Solar wind speed up to 8.4 protons per cubic centimeter. A small downtick in the wind speed there. 361 kilometers per second. Look at the rest of the data here. Magnetometer is looking pretty smooth. Again, we are expecting some perturbation in this when the coronal hole does connect, and that should be at any time. Before we get to that, I wanted to look at the magnetic lines. Let's head back to the SDO and take a look at that situation. Yeah, that coronal hole should be connecting magnetically anytime. KP is still at 1. It had been 0 for a little bit. Now it's back up to 1. Cosmic ray warning remains in effect. There's your electron flux. It's been pretty predictable the last 3 or 4 days, and we've pretty much predicted it. Nothing new or too exciting with that. The F2 layer is looking pretty discharged right now. However, not particularly anomalous. Let's look at some instruments we don't always look at here. Look at the geospace. Magnetic perturbations over the poles. Shouldn't be anything too significant there. Let that play through. Not very interesting at all. Take a look at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. Here's your X-ray imager and your LASCO C3. Here's your X-ray situation. We see some X-rays coming out of active regions in the east and the west. Pretty low activity though. And here's your LASCO C3. You can see Mercury there in the foreground. Let that play through. Not a lot going on there by way of coronal mass ejections or anything, as we would expect. Let's get into exoplanets. So the first exoplanets that have ever been photographed directly are this system right here. It's kind of a weird system. It's full of dust and gas. And you can see a very dusty area here right around the star. And the whole system is actually like that. And these are the first exoplanets to ever be photographed directly. Normally we only use the diminishment of the light from the star or the star gravitationally wobbling to determine that there's planets there. I believe this happened in 1988. Anyway, links to the article below. These are all big planets that are like about 7 times the size of Jupiter. However, their distance from the star and intensity and so on gives these planets a similar amount of solar radiation as the Earth would receive. And one of these planets, in one of these planets' atmospheres, we've detected water. So that's interesting. Interesting article from Science Alert there. We'll of course leave links so you can read up on it yourself. Let's take a look at the cosmic ray situation in Finland and Mexico. So, nothing too extreme there. High levels of cosmic rays, but not as high as they get sometimes. Let's look at a 10-day of the Mexico. What is it? Yeah, the Mexico Cosmic Ray Observatory. This is the last 10 days here. A couple little spikes there when we were down at KP of 0, so that's been typically corroborating cosmic ray data. And here's an interesting article from Eureka Alert, which will pave our way into the weeds. Could an anti-global warming atmospheric spraying program really work? Well, it could. It could make the planet colder. That would be unfortunate since it's already naturally doing that. And let's reiterate that carbon dioxide has absolutely nothing to do with the climate. All right. So here's a great article. Again, we'll leave the links for it. Great article that chemtrail enthusiasts are going to read half of and then claim that this article proves that chemtrails really exist. You know, commercial airliners spraying chemicals in order to change atmospheric parameters and so forth. So, This article talks about a study figuring out the costs and so forth. And this hypothetical solo geoengineering project, which is idiotic, I might add, would begin about 15 years from now, and its aim would be to have the increase in anthropogenic radiative forcing, which, since that doesn't really exist, it would be really easy to cut it in half. I mean, I don't know how you cut 0 in half, but whatever. And it's about spraying aerosols into the stratosphere, about how it would be very cost effective, and how it's utterly moronic. What's very interesting is that we don't have planes capable of doing this. Okay? Let's see. President of Boeing says he became very intrigued by the engineering questions around stratospheric aerosol injection and the many studies that purport to show that modified existing planes could do the job. Turns out it's not so. It would indeed take an entirely new plane design to do stratospheric aerosol injection under reasonable, albeit entirely hypothetical parameters. No existing aircraft has the combination of altitude and payload capabilities required. Now, let's look at more information about debunking chemtrails, since they aren't real. Everybody's going out and they're looking up in the sky and they're seeing commercial aircraft fly over and they're seeing persistent contrails and they're claiming that that's some kind of chemicals being sprayed from the planes. It's not. So, links to this article too, Contrail Science, their link, How to Debunk Chemtrails. Now, let's go through a couple claims here. Theorists claim contrails used to dissipate in a few seconds or minutes at most, but they didn't. There's been contrails throughout history, at least from 1950. Actually, there's been contrails in World War II, pre-World War II contrails. Let's just take one little photo here. Anyway, we'll leave links to all this below. Anyway, we've got about 100 years of photographs debunking these ideas. The next theorist claim is that chemical tests reveal aluminum and barium have been sprayed. In reality, the tests show normal levels of chemicals. Oftentimes, chemicals are very badly performed, testing soil instead of water. All the links are provided. The next one is photos and videos show spray planes. Let's take a look at this other tab here just to give you an idea about how nonsensical this is as it debunks each one. Here's some chemtrail aircraft photos. Here's a Boeing 777 full of spooky looking aluminum kegs, which are full of water in order to change the center of mass in the plane during testing. Here's another spooky plane. Here's some planes that have pipes sticking out in various places. These are to take atmospheric samples, not to spray anything. This plane here is to spray water out of it to test out in-flight icing situations on U.S. Air Force planes, as noted here, as the F-35 is sprayed with water. So, yep, here's a plane dumping fuel, and so on, and so on. As air traffic increases... Oh, here's the next one. Lots of people believe in chemtrails because it's mentioned in a government bill, so it must be a thing that's occurring. Okay, well, lots of people believe in lots of things. Lots of people believe a lot of untrue things. People don't remember a lot of contrails like this. Grids and X patterns prove they can't be contrails, while in fact grids and X patterns are just proof of lots of air traffic. And where I'm located, air traffic has increased 16%. And chemtrail alarmism has increased 300%. Chemtrails are not contrails because contrails don't act like that. In reality, contrails sometimes persist and spread. It depends on the weather at 30,000 feet and not on the ground. Anyway, we're going to leave all the links. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe the videos. Share with your friends. We'll be doing it again tomorrow. Remember, when you're staring at stars, don't drink. And if you drink, don't drive.